podcast in which one man strives to level up his geekhood and helping you do the same, one battle at a time. Now, let's get geeky with Gamer Leaf.
In the mountains, high above the Dragonlands, there are a group of people known as Dragon Riders. These Dragon Riders train for years to bond with their dragons. Only a true bond can help defeat the other dragons in combat over the skies.
Cool. Does that sound familiar to you? It didn't sound familiar to me either. We'll find out in a little bit what exactly it was. It's a story to a game, as you well know, but we'll find out a little bit later. Today we have on a guest, and we'd like to ask him a couple questions before we let you know who it is. How are you doing tonight? How did you get into tabletop gaming?
Oh, I'm doing great. Yeah, I've been playing tabletop games for pretty much my whole life. When I was very young, I started out with Settlers of Catan with my younger siblings, and my littlest brother, I couldn't wait for him to get old enough to play Catan. So yeah, I've been playing board games with my brothers ever since I was very little.
Cool. So was that the game that got you hooked, the Settlers of Catan then, or was it a different game?
Yeah, that was pretty much the primary game. We played a lot of games like HeroScape and Risk 2210, but Settlers of Catan was probably the first one I remember really enjoying.
Cool. What can you tell me about it? I know people always talk about it, but I've never played it.
Yeah, so it's a game where you build these like settlements and cities, and you collect resources, and then you use those resources that you're collecting from those settlements to build more roads and settlements and cities to collect more resources, and you're also trading with with the other players. So you might have a lot of wood, but you might need sheep, so you'll trade some wood for sheep and that kind of thing.
Cool. So is it like a resource management or civilization building, or both of them combined?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of collecting resources, and then if you hold too many resources in your hand and a 7 is rolled, then you lose all your resources. So it's about like building up your resources, knowing when to trade, and then spending those resources efficiently.
Cool. So is one of those your favorite game mechanic, or what is your favorite game mechanic?
So I really like co-op games a lot. I really like being all on the same team fighting the game, but I also like mind games where you know what your opponent's going to do, and then the game lets you like do something to use that information to your advantage.
Oh, cool. Mind game. Like what would be I haven't really heard of those. I'm kind of new to tabletop gaming. Fell in love with it last year and whatnot. Even though my wife's been at it for a while. So what's one of those mind games? What kind of game? What are the names of those mind games or whatnot?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Dragon and Rider is one, but we'll talk about that later. But another game, well, when you think back to chess about the kind of like thinking a few moves ahead, that's an element of it. But also just like any game with simultaneous movement. So like X-Wing Miniatures is a really good example of a game where you think it's in the Star Wars universe. So you think their TIE fighter is going to go left. And so you might go left as well, so you can keep them in your firing arc and that kind of thing.
Oh, cool beans. Yeah, so I'm big into checkers. I actually served a mission for my church, and when I was in one of my areas, he was like a really good old guy. He was our mission leader, and he was big into checkers. He was like 80 plus years old, and he did checkers. He was like a professional checker player at one time, and got really into that. Like even studied books and whatnot about how to play checkers, and where you have to think a move ahead of your opponent, like several moves ahead. And so yeah, that makes sense now that you say that.
Yeah, that's that kind of thinking ahead. I really like that.
Cool. So do you have a favorite game currently?
So one game that I'm really enjoying is Star Wars Rebellion. It's kind of a heavier game. It kind of takes all of the Star Wars movies and puts them into a box. and that's really cool. Another one of my favorite games of all time is Sentinels of the Multiverse. It's one of those cooperative games where each of you chooses a superhero, and you each get to be a superhero, and you're fighting against supervillains, and each hero feels really different, and that's probably my favorite game.
Oh wow! So the superheroes that it has, is that like all the Marvel people, or what superheroes are there?
So it's actually from the Sentinels comics, which are written by Christopher Bedell, the designer of the game. So instead of Iron Man and Captain America, you've got Bunker and you've got Legacy, and they all have their own stories that some of them you kind of make up through the game, but then there are also like comics and stuff and lore text on the cards that kind of let you know who the characters are.
Oh, well, I guess that goes to show how ungeeky I am. I didn't even know about those comic books. I guess the podcast, after all, is getting geeky with Game Relief, so you learn something new every day. So maybe I've earned some geek cred, or maybe they're showing how much ungeeky I actually am. So let's say there was a game that playing a game would save your best friend from dying slow, agonizing, or actually a quick death or whatnot. What's a game that you wouldn't play even to save your best friend who was dying?
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, most of the games I really like, I mean, I'm more of a social gamer, so it depends on the group I'm playing with. But there are games that I don't enjoy as much. Generally, the games I don't enjoy as much is games that don't have very much player choice. So games like Zombie Dice, where it's just kind of like you've got one or two choices, or like Life, the game, or Candyland, where it's all kind of on a linear track where you roll your dice and you move your piece and you don't move that far. So those are the kinds of games I don't tend to like. But if I'm playing with a group of friends or to save someone's life, I'll still play them. I like playing games.
Well, there you go. There you go. So I guess your friends don't have to worry anymore because you'll save their life regardless. Now let's see here. So it sounds like you preferred a game with a lot of people or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, usually I'm playing with my brothers if I'm playing a game, or a couple of my friends. I tend to play in like groups of four. Those four people usually change from game to game, but there are a few games I've played that handle even more players than that, which is pretty cool.
Oh boy, cool, cool. So is there a max where you cut off, like, on how many players you want to play with, or you just we could go in infinity number?
Yeah, well, it depends on the game, but I find a lot of games have trouble handling more than 6 or 8 players. There are a couple games that are designed specifically to work well with like 6 and 7 and 8 players, like Resistance is a good example of a game that can kind of handle a large group. But usually, once we hit like 8 people, we usually split into groups of two. So, or two groups, four in each group. And that's usually how we handle it.
Well, there you go. It sounds like you have a bird in the background.
Yeah, I apologize for that. That is Fluffy, or Luftwaffe, as we call him. A little joke there about the Luftwaffe was what the German Air Force was called, and Fluffy is the Luftwaffe because he's got the same kind of coloring as Mr. Smith, kind of gray and white-headed cockatiel.
Oh wow! So he's named after the whole German Air Force. You said.
Yep, pretty much.
Well, there you go. That's a famous bird. Cool. Do you think you'd sing a song for us, or would that not be good?
Maybe. Let me see. Hey, Fluffy. Hey, bird. You want to sing a song? You want to sing a song? He's doing that clicking sound.
There you go. Maybe, I don't know.
Yep, well, he's got a lot to say. Not quite singing today, but sure is talkative.
A lot to say. Cool, cool, cool bean. So yeah, he's got a bird and everything. And I saw a video recently where you maybe have a suit or a sport coat. Do you have a
Yeah,
preference
so
on a three? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, so that comes from my speech and debate days. I did speech and debate when I was homeschooled in high school, and so I just kind of got used to whenever I'm doing something kind of important, I put on this suit jacket, and it kind of puts me into the mode of being serious and doing something big.
Oh, cool. So yeah, how'd that work? My actually, yeah, that's interesting because we actually homeschool our kids too. Minus our son that has autism. How did gaming have anything to play? Because you can learn from games. Anything to do with homeschooling or whatnot?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I know I played a lot with my brothers, like when we weren't doing school, which I think board games and homeschooling kind of together worked really well into because we had a big family to kind of bring my family together, which is really cool. And that's one of the reasons I like games is because it brings people together. And I think homeschooling and board games kind of contributed to that. And I think I have also learned a lot from games when it comes to making decisions and thinking about things. I actually, this is a pretty good story. So I was trying to learn this new way of project management. And there was this app, Trello, where you assign each thing as a task. And what I did is I took the board game Arkham Horror, or yeah, or Eldritch Horror, one of those games. And what we did is every time a new enemy spawned on the board, that's a co-op game where you're trying to fight off all of these enemies. Every time a new enemy would appear on the board, we'd assign it as a task on the Trello board, and we would prioritize and assign people to the different tasks just like it was any other kind of project, but this just happened to be a board game about saving the world, and we could just see the list of tasks we needed to do, and it really helped us like beat the game really efficiently because we could see which tasks were important, which tasks hadn't been done a long time, like for many turns, and which ones weren't important at all and we could just ignore. And that was really fun.
Well, there you go. Watch out, anybody who has a co-op game that you want people to lose. You got to watch out. There's an app now that's going to help people win. That sounds like cool.
Yeah.
So, with the going back to the suit coat, do you prefer like a three-piece or a two-piece suit?
Mine is actually a two-piece suit, but actually what I usually do is I just put the suit jacket over a t-shirt and like shorts or pants, depending on how cold it is. In Texas, it gets really warm, so usually it's shorts. So it's not super formal, but the suit jacket adds a little bit of extra to what's normally just a casual, like go to a board game convention or something.
Well, there you go. I fully support the three-piece suits, but that sounds even cooler. Wear that with the pair of shorts. I wear basketball shorts even under when I wear a suit to church or whatnot. I still got my basketball shorts on, so that sounds perfect. Just throw the basketball clothes on, and then throw the suit coat on top. That sounds awesome.
Yep.
So, do you when you're wearing that, if you don't have a t-shirt or whatnot, and you had to wear a tie, would you pick a necktie or a bow tie?
So this is actually an interesting question because a friend of mine in high school, we were watching Doctor Who, and the doctor at that time was really into bow ties and bow ties being cool. So I think we started a WordPress blog entitled "Bow Ties Are Cool," and we had pictures of like all these famous actors and stuff wearing bow ties. That being said, I'm more of a traditional guy myself. That's what I wore in speech and debate.
Oh man, I don't know if we can be friends. Not even a full suit, and if it is, it's a two-piece suit. And then you don't even like ties. Well, yeah, you do, yeah. You don't, or wait, you said you like ties or not ties?
I like the normal ties. Yeah,
Oh,
the
normal ties.
long
Yeah, we can be
ones.
friends. I have like over 300 plus. I don't know if I have any bow ties. I think it'd be cool to have them.
Yeah, and I mean that's a great thing about board games is it can bring all kinds of different people together. If we're playing a board game, it doesn't matter if you like ties and I don't or
That's
whatever.
true. Yeah, good call. Good call. So a little while ago, I saw a tie with like D20s on it. Do you believe in gaming ties, or what do you feel about that?
I think that would be really cool. My only question about that would be when would you wear it? Because like usually when you're wearing a tie, you want to be very formal and it's a very serious occasion. But I could see going to a board game convention and wearing a cool, fun, like D20 die. It kind of reflects your personality and it's kind of a different way of wearing a tie that I think the certain personality type or a certain event, I think somebody could totally pull it off and it could be pretty cool.
Yeah, that might even go along with your shorts and sport coat.
Yeah, maybe.
There you
I
go.
am not a fashion expert, by the way, just in case y'all are wondering at
Oh
home.
boy, yeah, it doesn't, yeah, I don't know, me neither, but yeah, so we won't get started in that. Luckily, this isn't a fashion podcast. Now, let's talk about the state of Texas. Wait, I meant, let's talk about Kickstarter. What's your
Ooh.
favorite game on Kickstarter currently?
Well, I really like Dragon in Rider. That game looks pretty cool.
Why is that?
Well, full disclosure, I've actually am the game designer for Dragon and Rider, but I think it looks really cool because it's dragons and riding dragons, and it looks pretty cool.
Wait, it's by you? So we're lucky enough to have the designer of Dragon and Rider on Getting Geeky with Game Relief joining us. Fancy that. And yeah, so we have today we on our show we have William, I hate to slaughter it, Umstat.
Stat. Like you can't remember how to say it, and then stat, like if you say it fast enough, then it won't matter.
Oh, there you go, Umstat. So William Umstat on the podcast tonight, and he's the designer of Dragon and Rider, a new game on Kickstarter. So tell us about this game.
Yeah, so Dragon and Rider is a 4-player game about fighting in the skies over the Dragon Mountains. So one player on each team, it's a 2-on-2 team game, kind of like Spades, where there are 2 people on one team and 2 people on another team. And one player on each team gets to play as a dragon, which is super cool. And the other player gets to play as the Dragon Rider. And they're trying to like work together to fight, but because one's a human and one's a dragon, communication is limited because they don't speak the same language. So you're like revealing cards to your partner and that kind of thing, but you're not actually allowed to table talk publicly.
Oh boy, did that get kind of difficult or not? Or
So once you get a hold on it, because at different times, like the dragon player will reveal a move that maybe they want to do. So, and then the dragon rider player gets to reveal a card that they don't want their partner to do. And all of this is public to both their partner and their opponent. So a lot of information hits the table. So you can kind of see, oh, my partner doesn't want me to do this, but I kind of said I wanted to do this, but maybe we want to do this other thing instead. So it's kind of like, did you watch The Princess Bride?
yeah, it's been years, but yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
one.
so basically the game is the battle of wits against Fazzini and the Spaniard guy, where
Oh,
he's
yeah, I
like,
think I
well,
remember that. Yeah.
clearly, yeah. So it's like, well, clearly I can't choose the goblet in front of you. So it's kind of like that, only with 4 people.
Oh, there you go. Cool. So, say me and you were on a team. How would gameplay look?
Yeah, so if I was the dragon player, what I'd do is I would pick one card of the 3 different moves because it's kind of like a rock, paper, scissors. So I'd pick one of the 3 different moves and provide a bonus to that for this round. So if we were to do that move, it would be even better than it normally would. And then you would look at that card and then look at our opponent's card of what move they've got a bonus to, and you'd choose what move to do and what move to reveal publicly to me. And the move that you reveal to me, I now know you didn't do that move, but you did something else. And then I'd make my final decision.
Oh, okay. So that would help you maybe on a later on move if I showed you a public card.
Yeah, so to use the rock, paper, scissors analogy, basically, I give a buff to paper. You say, I'm going to do this secret move, and I don't want you to do scissors. And so now I know, oh, well, if you're not doing scissors and I got a buff to paper, maybe I should do paper, but my opponents know that, so maybe they're going to do rock, so I should actually, or whatever, you know.
Uh-huh. Oh, wow. Cool. So, why should somebody take a chance on this game, especially out of all the games out there on Kickstarter?
There are a lot of cool games on Kickstarter right now, but how many of those games have dragons that you can ride, because riding a dragon and being able to share the mind with your opponent and that kind of feeling of I knew you were going to play that card, so I did the card to beat you, and then succeeding or failing, that feeling is just really fun. And it's a great game for two couples or two children and two parents. It's a very good family game as well because it only plays in 30 minutes.
Well, there you go. And it doesn't look like there's too many. I go ahead and look on here on the Kickstarter, and it says there were 3 projects that come up, but they might have been closed by now. It doesn't look like they're still open. And 2 of them are, one's a tabletop game, one's a video game, and one's a motorcycle. Wonder Woman themed motorcycle when you type in riding a dragon on Kickstarter. So yeah, to answer your question, so it doesn't look like there's too many games, especially with ones where you can ride a dragon. So there you go. You heard it here first on Getting Geeky with Game Relief. So awesome. And let's see here. So why did you guys go the Kickstarter route then?
So this is our first game. So we wanted to kind of test the market to see how many games we should produce and see how much interest there is for an awesome dragon and writing game. And I also am just a huge fan of Kickstarter. I've been backing Kickstarter projects for a really long time. I got Zaya and then the expansion to Zaya, some Sentinals of the multiverse expansions as well. And so I'm just a fan of the whole Kickstarter model in general. And it also was a really good fit for my game and where we are in the project right now.
Cool. So you talk about we. Is this like a 2-man or 10-man project, or how big is this project?
So that's an interesting question. So I'm the game designer. My brother David has been helping me a lot with playtesting and writing the rule book. So he's almost even a co-designer. And then my older brother Thomas is kind of helping with more of the business side. Of course, I'm getting support from a lot of my other families as well. We also have a graphic designer, Rubens Castro, and our artist is Scott Harschenberger. So it's mainly 3 major members, the game designer, graphic designer, and artist, with a bunch of other subsidiary people. And then we've play tested it with dozens and dozens of people as well, if not hundreds.
Cool. So you talk about the playtesting. During the playtesting, was there ever a part of the game that you just had to scrap because it wouldn't work?
Yes. So there were 2 things. The first thing was the original theme of the game was actually Pacific Rim, based off of the Pacific Rim movie with giant robots. That was the original inspiration. But we can't use that license because we don't own that intellectual property. So we changed it to dragons, which is way cooler anyway. But mechanically, when we were playtesting the game, we used to have dice in the game, believe it or not. And you'd roll the dice to see what move would be better this round. And the problem with that was it wasn't fun, and it was kind of getting in the way of I played the cards, I flipped them up, and I know, oh, I beat you. It was getting in the way of that, which was the fun part. And so I had to remove the dice, and then I changed the theme to dragons and dragon writing, and then everything fell into place, and it's a lot more like what you see today.
Cool. Well, that's better for you, isn't it? You don't like the dice. You like to see what people are thinking and whatnot, huh?
Yeah, and the dice were getting in the way of that. And I did like the dice, but I removed them, and then I was happy they were gone.
Well, there you go. There you go. That's exciting. So what about the part that you're most proud of? What's the part of Dragon and Rider that you're most proud of?
So the part that I'm most proud of, and the part that was really the inspiration for the entire game and kind of what I call the core of the game, was the idea of knowing what your partner was going to do, or at least having a really good hunch that your partner was going to do something and what your opponents were going to do, and then choosing a card that then gave you a bonus because you acquired that knowledge. And what we had to do is balance how much information to give the players, because if you give them too much information, that choice is too easy and it's not fun. And if you don't give enough information, you can't make the choice, so it's not fun. But I think we've really struck the balance of having enough information to make your decisions where there's still that element of, oh, I'm not sure if you did this or this, but when you get it right, that feeling is so much fun.
Oh, there you go. Cool, cool beans. So I have to have 4 people to play this. I can't play it with more or less.
So, for players, what I'd recommend to play Dragon and Rider because you've got that team element of two people thinking about against two people. Now, there is, and this might be the first place we've talked about this publicly.
Oh boy, there you
So,
go. We're lucky.
yeah, so there is a two-player version that is basically the same as the four-player version. You just play it with two people. So you play as both the dragon and the rider, and it's much more about revealing like false signals to your opponent and bluffing, and it's a lot more of a bluffing game. So it's almost a different game, even though it uses the same rules, but it's still really fun, and it's a two-player version. Unfortunately, we don't have a three-player version, but it's a four-player game with a two-player variant. That's a lot of fun.
Well, there you go. Cool. So, if we go ahead and back this on Kickstarter, what all do we get?
So if you back, currently we have the $20 level plus shipping. So if you're in the US, it's $6 shipping. So for $26, you get a copy of Dragon and Rider shipped anywhere to the US. And for $10 shipping, you can get it in Canada, and $15 shipping gets it anywhere else in the world.
Okay, cool. Cool. So you got the cards and whatnot. Cool. So, what I know you don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but if somebody backs this on Kickstarter, when do you anticipate them being able to get their product so they can begin playing either bluffing a two-player game or trying to beat the other team?
Well, Kickstarters are notoriously late, but we're going to try to get this game to you by January of next year.
Well, there you go. There you go. Cool beans. Cool beans. Now, so let's see. So if you're listening to the podcast, and hopefully you're still listening. Hopefully my voice isn't that boring because it can't be the bird in the background. So you want to go, if you're driving especially, you don't want to fall asleep. So hopefully you're awake still. Pull over to the side of the road and check the show notes because it'll be in there in the show notes. And go ahead and at least check out Dragon and Rider there on Kickstarter. We'll leave that all there. And now we're on to the next section of the podcast, which is called AAA. Don't worry, it's because this is a family show. That means Adventures in Application Acquisition. I know you talked about an application earlier that helped you beat a co-op game. Is there another application that you use a lot of, or is that the application you'd like to talk about?
Well, actually, my favorite board game in the world, Sentinels of the Multiverse, actually has both an iPhone, iPad game version, and also I think it's on Steam for PC. I don't know if it's on Mac, but there is an app for iPhones. I don't know if it's on Android, but Sentinels of the Multiverse is a really fun game, and the app handles it really well.
Oh, well, there you go. Cool. What can you tell us about well, I guess the game and the app, if anybody else is new to Kickstarter, well, not Kickstarter, new to tabletop gaming like I am.
Yeah, so Sentinels of the Multiverse is a cooperative game, which means that it means that you're working together to beat the game. So there are different villains that you're fighting to kind of save the world from them taking over the world, and you choose different heroes. And so depending on what heroes you choose and what villains you choose, that can change the difficulty level. But basically all you do is you play a card, you use a power, and then you draw a card. And that's all the rules. Now you know how to play. But where the strategy comes in is each hero has their own decks of cards. So what card you play and what power you use is actually not a very easy choice sometimes.
Oh, cool, cool. So is that application, is it a pass and play, or how do they work out the co-op thing?
So you can play against the app itself. So kind of like a computer version where you control all the different heroes. You could pass and play very easily. I don't know if they have a feature enabled for it, but there's no reason why you couldn't do that because it's very clearly this person's turn and then this person's turn. And I know they were gonna add a multiplayer functionality. I know that's in the computer version right now. I think it's in the phone version as well, but I think you can play with multiple phones kind of all linked up together as well.
Cool. Well, jumping back to the game, you talked about everybody has their deck of cards. Are you building a deck, or you already have a deck, or how's that work?
So it's a preset deck. Each hero has their own unique deck that doesn't have any of the same cards pretty much as any other deck. And so at the beginning of the game, you choose, I'm going to play Absolute Zero. And you might choose, well, I'm going to play Raw. And so then that would be our team, and we'd need a third person. So maybe someone picks up Unity, one of the expansion people. And then you've got your team of 3 superheroes or 5 superheroes, each with their own deck. And you're not going to be building that deck. That's going to be the deck you have. But depending on what cards you draw from that deck, it's still going to be a little different every time.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I really like Deck Builder, but that sounds kind of interesting as well. So let's say you own the rights to, you call it Sentinels of the Multiverse?
Yeah.
Let's say you own the rights to the application. What's one thing you would do to make that better?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would make it personally. I would make it where if you bought a copy of the physical game, you would get the application for free. Because currently, I have bought every single version of the physical board game in person. Like we bought every single expansion, so we have all the physical components. And then I bought the base game on my iPhone, and I think I just bought the base game again on Steam. And I wish that you didn't have to buy it multiple times in multiple different places. But other than that, I mean, the game itself is great, and it's really worth the money. So I don't know what I'm complaining about.
Well, there you go. It's kind of like those when you buy a video DVD and you can get like the digital codes and whatnot. So if you're listening, I doubt you are, but if anybody's listening that's in production of that, that's something you can do to make the app better. But it sounds like William really likes it anyway.
I
So
do, I
that's
do.
great. Now, so if somebody wanted to find you, minus coming there to Texas to stalk you and whatnot, how would they go about doing that?
So the easiest way to find our Kickstarter right now is either search Dragon and Rider on Kickstarter, or you can go to our bit link, which is bit.ly/Dragon and Rider. So it's a bit.ly link /Dragon and Rider. And then the name of our company is Stone Table Games, Stone Table like Chronicles of Narnia, Stone Table Games on Facebook and Twitter.
Cool. And I forgot to add, yeah, we'll make sure we leave all that in the show notes. So, yeah, so you don't crash, and you'll want to make sure you go ahead and check that out there on the Kickstarters, and we'll leave that all in the show notes. I forgot to ask, so was there something that inspired you making this game?
Yeah, so I really liked the idea of the kind of battle of wits from Princess Bride and the kind of drift system in Pacific Rim, the movie with the giant robots where 2 people are driving 1 robot, and also kind of like the Vulcan mind meld from Star Trek. So those were kind of the original inspirations. Thinking back to it, a lot of the mechanics I kind of borrowed from a football game I kind of tried to make when I was very early on and trying to learn how to design games. And so I kind of borrowed a lot from the lessons I learned from that game as well.
Well, there you go. And it doesn't sound like any of those movies are dragons, and I know there's no dragons in football, is there?
No, that would make the game probably way more interesting, though.
Well, there you go. That's for sure. So if anybody's playing football, if you got some dragons, bring them to the next football game because William said so, and it'd be a lot more interesting, it sounds like.
It would. And I do like dragons, and there are a lot of really good dragon movies. My oldest brother, Thomas, has a rule that he will always watch any movie with dragon in the title or dragon in the trailer. And that has gotten him to watch some pretty mediocre movies, but there are some good ones that he's found too.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there any what do they call them? I forget what they call them, but like the B-rated movies or whatnot, that are not very good. Is there any dragon? I imagine there's some of those without dragons in them.
Yeah, some B movies. I don't know if you'd call it a B movie, but Aragon, I kind of enjoyed that one. That one has dragons. If you think the Lord of the Rings, the Ringwraith ride the fell beasts. Sorry, my nerd is showing a little bit there, but those are kind of like dragons. They fly around. They're big and black and scary, kind of like dragons. They don't show up until the second 2 movies. And then, of course, The Hobbit is all about going to kill a dragon. That's also Tolkien. So I wouldn't call The Hobbit a B-list movie, but I would call it an amazing dragon movie.
Oh, there you go. There you go. So, yeah, awesome dragon movies, and that shows how much how much geekiness I have to go, I guess. Well, once again, no, I don't know if we did it before, but we'd like to thank you for coming on the show with us today, William.
Thank
And
you
we'll
so
go
much
ahead
for
and make
having
sure
me.
we
This
get
was a lot of fun.
awesome, and we'll make sure we leave everything in the show notes so they can find you. They won't have to come to your hometown to stalk you, but they can be able to see what you got going on in Kickstarters and whatnot.
Thank you.
No problem. You have a good one.
You too.
Gamer Leaf levels up. Tune in next week to see if Gamer Leaf's luck holds up.